Doomsday 26, no, no, when that soul reaches the collarbones. In all translations without exception, the word, eloquence, is translated as, soul, and is attributed to the imaginary Azrael with a scythe sickle who is claimed to take lives. However, the word, soul, does not appear in the verses. The correct translation is, when the discourse rises from the throat. I have said that all interpreters translate the word eloquence, or preaching, as soul. Likewise, in the 83rd verse of Vakia I will explain this shortly. However, the word, belagat, means, communication, explanation, speaking, as we know it. In fact, the verse immediately following it proves this. Apocalypse 27 and it is said, who is there to read this? As you can see, the subject has nothing to do with the imaginary Azrael. The real story emphasizes that, the Quran, that is, rhetoric communication, must be delivered, spoken to people and there must be no turning back for this purpose. It is possible to prove this with other verses of the Quran. For example, Vakia 83 when the soul reaches the throat. Here too, the word, life, is not used, nor is there any sign of the taking of life before or after. The whole event is about rhetoric communication and how this communication reaches its destination and how people's status is raised through it. The correct translation of the verse is as follows, Al-Waqia 83 when the word hadith reaches the throat. Now do not turn back on that word, say it, if you are faithful, and this issue is clarified 4 verses later. Al-Waqia 87 he says, if you are truthful, then send him back. We have delivered our message, so if you are truthful, then send him back. Now let's pay attention to the next 2 verses. Fact 81 are you now belittling this statement? Interestingly, the original verse contains the word, hadith, word. As you can see, the subject has nothing to do with the imaginary Azrael who is claimed to take lives. The subject is related to speech, discourse and communication, eloquence. The belief in the scythe-wielding Azrael is also mentioned in the Bible, as always. Revelation 14:15-20 Another angel came out of the temple and shouted to him sitting on the cloud, put forward your sickle and reap. The hour to reap has come, for the earth's crop is ripe. He who sat on the cloud thrust his sickle into the earth, and the earth's crop was reaped. Another angel who had power over fire came out from the altar and shouted to him who had the sharp sickle, put forward your sharp sickle. Gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. Then the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the fruit of the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of God's wrath. Blood flowed from a winepress that was broken into outside the city. The blood spread over 1,600 arrows and reached the bridles of the horses. The harvest mentioned here is not a product harvest, but a human harvest. The being called an angel is most likely the Egyptian god Anubis or Kronos. The distance of 1,600 arrow shots, if we take into account the record for the longest arrow shot being 850 meters, the bloodshed would have spread an average of 1,360 kilometers away. In other words, it was a huge massacre and most probably the beginning of the era. There are dozens of incorrect translations and additions like this in the Quran. When you say there is a contradiction, the ignorant masses rise up and first oppose it vehemently, then question it, and finally accept it. Because this is the truth and the truth cannot be changed. You can relax. There is no real angel of death with a scythe. Death is a simple phenomenon. Once consciousness is lost, you die, and unless you can find a way to bring it back, you're done for. The verse that best explains and supports this is the 39th verse of the Surah Az-Zumar. Allah takes the souls of the dead when the time of death comes, and of the immortal while they are asleep. He takes the souls for which he has decreed death, and leaves the others until a certain time. Surely, there are signs in this for people who will think carefully, he says. In other words, when we are about to lose consciousness, the death command, encoded in our DNA is activated. It is possible to stop or reverse this command even partially medically, but sometimes these reversals can be painful and the person can enter a vegetative state. This is the clearest verse that describes the moment of death. Where is the grim reaper with the scythe here? Just as this scythe-wielding angel Azrael came to us from the Bible, the word melech molech, in its spelling, also came to us from the Torah, but its usage there is different from ours. Molech is depicted in the Torah as a deity idol to which boys and girls are burned and dedicated. In our country, the spelling is similar but the meaning is different. In the Quran, Malik, Melech, owner, king, ruler, God. Property, owned. Melekhet, it means things under your control, and Melech, in short, means the servant of orders, the one who carries out orders. In other words, the expression, the angel of death assigned to you, mentioned in the 11th verse of the Sajda Surah does not describe a ghost with wings or a scythe coming to take your life, but rather describes the cell death that causes your consciousness to shut down, all your bodily functions to stop and you to enter the death phase, and this situation is coded into our DNA. A similar verse is Surah Al-An'am 61. Here it says, when death comes to one of you, our messengers kill him. The messenger here, that is, the thing in charge, is again, consciousness. When the death command is activated, the body is now obliged to carry out that command. You will either die in agony, suffer the torment of the grave, or burn in the fires of hell. These are all stories. The harvest at the time of Jesus was mentioned in the Quran in an exaggerated way, that's all.